You're listening to TFM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. Welcome to TFM's local watering hole, and I am just one of your hosts here, Matthew Rushing, and I'm so excited this week as we are going to be diving into, well, the latest Marvel Disney Plus series, and Christy could not make it this week because, unfortunately, she got caught in some winter weather. So apparently, let it snow, and because of that, and I'm just really excited that we had this planned. But Amanda, I'm so glad you're back to talk some more Marvel with me. And it's good that we had you on as a guest. Otherwise, it would have just been, well, I guess me.
I'm glad to be here, and it was well planned. So at least there was some backup for you here.
Well, I am excited to dive into this. It's been really interesting because I think each one of these series has been progressively getting better. At least that's been my take. And so, but before we do that, just want to, of course, remind you, you could find the 602 Club wherever you get your podcasts. Do just make sure that you are subscribed, and that means you will get the show as soon as it drops. And of course, if you're on Apple Podcasts, we would really appreciate a star rating review. And if you're on Spotify now, you can rate the podcast. So if you're a Spotify user listening to podcasts there, give us a star rating. Again, those star ratings and places like that help the show grow. People find the show. So, of course, you can also follow us over on Twitter at the 602 Club. And right now, we're just doing a little following contest. So if you follow us by the 25th of January, you could win a copy of Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire from the Essentials Legends collection. It's a really nice copy of the book with a really cool cover. So yeah, it could be yours just for following us. So make sure you're doing that on Twitter. You can also find us on Instagram at the 602 Club TFM. And then we're also on Facebook, facebook.com/TrekFM. Listeners only discussion group on Babel called the Babel Conference there on Facebook, as well as helping us out over on Patreon at patreon.com/TrekFM and see how you can become part of our team. Really want to thank our associate producers over there, Ken Tripp, Davis Grayson, Ryan Maillet, and Daniel Noah. They've been supporting this show as well as the network for years now, and just really want to say thank you to them. And again, there's no way we can do this. This is just so expensive to put together, and we could really use your help here in 2022. So again, go to patreon.com/TrekFM. So I do want to ask you this because we haven't talked to you about any of the Marvel shows yet, and I'm just wondering where you're coming from with them so far, Amanda. What have you liked so far with the Disney Plus Marvel shows? And, you know, on the other side, was there anything you maybe haven't liked so far about them?
Honestly, I have been on board for all of the Disney Plus Marvel shows that have come. I think WandaVision is still currently my favorite. I really loved the themes that were going on there. But Loki was my kind of weird. Mm-hmm. I really appreciated that show. I really enjoyed Falcon and Winter Soldier. I thought there was also some really great thematic material in there, and I thought that a lot of these shows have done some beautiful passing of the torch type deals. So I'm excited to see what else they come up with.
Yeah, and I mean, I know obviously we've got, I think as of tonight, as we're recording this, is Monday, and during the playoff game that's happening now for the NFL, they're going to be premiering the Moon Knight trailer with Oscar Isaac, so very cool.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah, and then one of the characters we meet in this show called Echo is going to be getting her own show as well, and then we know shows like She-Hulk and things like that are going to be coming out, as well as I think Miss Marvel as well, so there's going to be so much stuff that's going to be continuing to come down the pipeline. And I think if I remember correctly, we've got a Loki season 2 that's going to be coming, and they're going to do a What If season 2. So
I think What If is the only series I haven't watched yet.
Same. I have not seen that as well. I think the first time I end up watching that will be for when John and I do it over on Assembling Avengers, and so I think I'm just going to keep that one for there. But no, I'm really excited then to talk to you because we do have a slightly different take because I do not like WandaVision, and so but for me, yeah, it's been very interesting because I felt like, just with each successive show, they've slowly been getting better. And so I'm really interested for this one here. I was trying to think about, how to break this down. And I think, just looking at character arcs is probably the best way to do it. And so I wanted to start, obviously, the show is called Hawkeye, but really the show is in many ways meant to introduce us to who's going to be the new Hawkeye. Which is Kate. So I just first wanted to ask you, and I think this might be a great place to start with Haley Steinfeld coming in to play this character of Kate Bishop.
I absolutely adored her. I thought she was fantastic, and she was genuine. She was green. She had some really sincere moments and some stuttering, tripped up, meeting her hero for the first time, trying to play it cool moments that, they were a little bit campy, but it was supposed to be that way. And I thought it was absolutely awesome. I had a great time watching the whole show.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I've really liked her for a long time. Honestly, she's what I think makes the Bumblebee movie that came out a couple years ago, Transformers wise, fantastic. It's a really good movie, and part of that is because of how well she carries it. And a lot of her personality obviously comes out in a lot of the things that she does. She definitely, I think, has a pretty big personality. But I loved her as Kate here because I think a lot of that seems to play well with this very young woman who's just on the, she's just cresting into, she's about to graduate college, she's trying to find her place in the world, and she gets the rare opportunity to meet her hero, and sometimes that doesn't always go well, but here it ends up being, I think, one of the best things she could absolutely have had in her life, especially with all that's going to happen to her. And I love the way that, they start the show by giving us her history with Hawkeye from the beginning, in the sense that, when the Avengers are defending New York, he's the one that she sees out her destroyed side of her apartment building. And it inspires her, especially with the loss of her father, to work to become a hero. I mean, her life's goal is to be the next Hawkeye, basically. I mean, she wants to be an Avenger. She wants to be a hero. And I think that's some really interesting psychology. And if there's anything I could say that I might have wanted just a little bit more of in the show, was even more of an exploration of the loss of her dad, as well as the way in which, in many ways, Clint kind of picks up those pieces and kind of, he really just becomes, in a sense, her hero dad,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that they did a really good job with how they worked Clint into her story later on, saving her from herself, essentially, because she had gotten in over her head. She wanted to prove something, and not just wanted to prove something. Like, she likes to nose around. She likes to, forge her own path and maybe get into a little bit of trouble. And I think she's always had some pretty decent safety nets considering her upbringing. And I think that's a little part maybe of the invincibility complex that she starts out with. And Clint brings her to a reality place, but not in a cruel way, and kind of guides her And I thought it was a really organic way that they kind of worked that throughout the story, where she started picking up parts of his trauma, what makes him him, what he's had to sacrifice and give up, and bringing her to the reality of what her dreams are. So I thought it was a really beautiful way that they could tell that story.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. And, I think a big part of that is to that. And I'm gonna put this on Steinfeld because I think she's able to play kind of manic very well, which is perfect for the character. I've heard from people who have read the comic that she seems pretty true to life to the Matt Fraction version. That this is really kind of drawing from, in the sense of, I know that, and I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, but I have it. That run, which it draws from the spirit of, but it doesn't actually copy any of the storylines really, because it's very different. But it's just kind of there's a lot of humor in that run from what I've heard and everything. So this is really drawing from that. But at the same time, I think one of the things that she's able to do is, on a dime, she can turn from being that kind of like manic and somewhat snarky or whatever to just being very emotionally open, like all of a sudden her heart is completely on her sleeve and you can see everything that she's thinking or feeling in that moment. And I think what makes it beautiful is a lot of people in the show are all experiencing much of the same things, which is loss. Mm-hmm. Kate's dealing with the loss of her father. You've got Clint, who's dealing with the loss of Natasha, and you have Yelena, who's dealing with the loss of Natasha. So you have all these people dealing with loss, and how they deal with that loss and what they do with that pain is really, really interesting. And unlike most of the people in the show, Kate has taken the loss of her dad, and instead of allowing that like frustration and rage, well, I guess Maya too is losing the loss of her father. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of father loss.
Thanks, Marvel.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like a Disney movie where you got to have at least one parent that's dead. Mm-hmm. So, and I guess it is Disney. So there you go.
Hey,
but so unlike a lot of people, and a theme we'll get to later is the way in which kind of like it can turn to rage, and that makes you kind of blind to things. She's really turned this into something very positive in her life, right? She's become an incredible archer. She's done really well in school, and she's become excellent at pretty much everything that she does, which allows her to have this feeling of confidence, maybe too much confidence in some places for her abilities, but mainly because she's earned all of that. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really cool thing to me, especially as I was rewatching the series this week, was just how well she plays all of those parts. But then obviously the way in which thematically a lot of these characters are all going through many of the same things, and how they deal with them is either similar and or different.
Yeah, it's definitely themed around the choices that you make in that situation. And I really liked seeing that they kind of laid these different paths out throughout this series to see because they all kind of did face the same losses. So where those choices led them afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's always good when a series comes together like that. And I think this series, above and beyond the other Marvel series so far, really felt cohesive in that sense, that all of these different storylines were actually working together towards the whole, which is really great. I do think it's really interesting to me too, is that, and just a sub note, I think really on Kate is we meet Jack, who's gonna marry her mother, and I really enjoyed them, of course, doing this whole misdirection of him being the bad guy, and I thought that was really fun. And it was actually a character to which, like, if they do a Hawkeye season 2, it'd be so fun to have him back because he's naively oblivious to lots of things happening around him. But he was actually a really sweet, like, what you realize is that he actually is a very genuine character. He's a genuine person. Like, he cares about Kate. He loves her mother. Like, all the things that he looked like on the surface was actually what he was. And I thought that was fun because they play it as misdirection, but really that's just who he is. And to me, I really enjoyed his character, and I thought he was a fun addition, and be interesting to see if they do anything with him in the future.
Yeah, I think that they could unwrap his character a little bit more in a coming season for sure. But he came off as so slimy in the beginning, and I was like, oh,
yes, he did.
You're a sleaze. What are you doing? And then he's like, helping everyone out at the end. And I'm like, okay, so maybe you're just like the golden retriever.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's a great point. Yes, he's like a golden retriever. And what I think is so interesting is we're in a world where it's also cynical, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're not used to characters actually being like that. We're not used to people being like that who are kind of what they portray themselves to be, and people who are like genuinely effusive in praise or are overly kind or seem too good to be true, we automatically think, oh, well, they've got to be too good to be true. And Jack's not, so, and that's what kind of makes him fun. Like you said in the very end where, he's brandishing his sword and helping them fight everybody off, it's great. So yeah. I really...
That man literally read a parenting book. About being a step-parent. And I'm like, is he trying to be like condescending right now? I feel like he's being condescending. No? Oh.
Nope.
Okay. He's really just trying to like get down to the psychology of it, I guess.
And that's what makes it so fun is because he doesn't really have a like dishonest bone in his body. Like that's what makes him so interesting as a character, especially when you realize that you get to the end and you realize, oh no, this is a guy that he's just being straight up about who he is, And so yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, he is the kind of guy who realizes he's going to be a stepdad. He doesn't know anything about being a stepdad, and he should probably read a book about it, to try and figure this out. It's great. Like that is. It's refreshing as I think what it is. By the time you get to the end and you realize, oh yeah, it's been misdirection the whole time and everything, like I think it's kind of refreshing to see a character like that because it just doesn't happen very often. And maybe it reminds us that preconceived notions about people, we need to be more careful about that. Mm-hmm. So I think obviously, of course, this show is called Hawkeye, and there's so much to talk here about with Clint. And I think one of the best things that this show does is that it reminds us that Clint is just human with no superpowers, and that the toll being a hero takes on you with mind, body, and soul, from the fact that he has to wear a hearing aid to the aches and pains of his body after every fight where he's putting ice or, daiquiri patches, frozen daiquiri patches. I think this is so smart because Clint is probably one of the most relatable characters in the MCU because he's just a dude, right? And yeah, he happens to be exceptional in the sense of his skills, but everything hurts when he comes back from a fight. And I think it's not just his body, but just seeing the toll that this has taken on him all of these years, you can understand in many ways why he just wants to be out. And I think, God, Jeremy Renner's so good in this show.
Mm-hmm. No, and I love that they incorporated the humanity of it because a lot of the times, like I love my Marvel movies, but they gloss over the trauma and they gloss over the physical trauma. Because not everyone is a god or, a superhero with space powers. And for the regular Joes who
has a fancy spacesuit to keep them safe.
Gets injected with special super serum or whatever. And no, some of these people, like him and Black Widow, Yelena, they are flesh and blood human. And at the end of the day, they have to go home, patch themselves up, and, sit in an ice bath.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I mean, even just the struggle here for him, like he's trying to be a good dad in many ways. He's taken his kids on this trip to try and make up for, all the things he's missed within it. And, they seem to be very understanding, but at the same time, how difficult that is because he doesn't just get to be a normal person because everybody knows what he looks like, and they're constantly being interrupted. I mean, he can't go to the frickin' bathroom and without somebody asking him for a selfie at the urinal.
Like he's mid-whiz and this guy is asking him for an autograph. The audacity. Where are the boundaries?
Yes. I mean, come on. Like,
who talks
if you saw
I'm not a
somebody
dude.
Famous.
Like, I am no dude. But if you're a dude, at what point do you ever think it's okay to talk to another dude when he's taking a leak?
One, it's a rule. You don't talk to the dude next to you, especially if you don't know them. Now, if you know each other, maybe you say 2 words. And that's usually if you've just walked in together, but otherwise, I mean, even if you walk in and somebody else is there, you might just give them the hey. No, you don't talk to people then. Second, do you ask a celebrity who's taking a whiz for a selfie while he's in the act?
The lack of boundaries just made my skin crawl. I was like, oh gosh, are you kidding me right now? I couldn't handle it. Bless, honestly, for being as cool as he was, because
yeah, it was frustrating. I mean, I felt so bad for him on that front. And then, I think that what you also see is, and I really liked this, we saw that Clint had made a decision during the blip to go a very different route.
That's an understatement.
And as he mentions to Kate, being the Ronin, choosing to be the Ronin, he had put his skills to use. And with those skills, he had done his research to make sure the people he was taking out were people that deserved it. I guess basically he's almost like Dexter at this point, But with that, he's having to now pay for the choices he made as Ronin. And it could cost him everything. And so, again, this is one of those places that I think is really, really special about this series, is that we are finally dealing with the repercussions of some choices here. And they are vastly terrible consequences. His whole family could end up dead.
Yep.
And so, to me, this is what I think is really special, is that we all saw the movie, and in many ways, I felt like it for a long time. It just kind of got glossed over. And here, no, we're going to deal with this, and it could cost him everything he has been trying to protect this whole time. Yeah, I just it's so good.
I mean, vigilantism comes at a price, and when there's other people to pay, there's nothing more painful to the person than watching others suffer. I mean,
Yep.
And he didn't ever expect that there would be anyone for them to hurt again. I mean, he was going off of his current reality, but he made these decisions and he hurt a lot of other people down the grapevine, inadvertently through these choices he made. And now we're seeing the fallout.
Well, I like what you said too. Like this could happen. Like he didn't realize that he might have a family again, that there would be a possibility of there being a family again. And I think, and obviously this comes down to the idea of choices that we make. And, he stands by the choice that he made to be Ronin. And yet I think he also realizes that he made a wrong choice, right? And he's willing to deal with the consequences of that. But he's also not willing to allow his family to pay for those choices. And I think that's the difficult position that he's in. And so it's one of those things where, when Elena says to him that we're defined by what we do, not pretty words, I mean, it's such a really great point, because that's truly what this series is about being defined by the choices we make. Kate has to make her choices. Clint has to make his choices. We deal with the fallout of the choices that Kate's parents have made, both of them, the terrible choices that they've made. And what you do in that moment is what either makes you a hero or a villain. And so I think, with Clint, it's really interesting to kind of watch him walk this line, but at the same time, like, and I kind of appreciate that about the show, he's still willing to do whatever it takes to make sure his family is safe. And there are plenty of lines that he'll cross to make sure that's the case.
Yeah, and he also sticks his neck out for Kate, a stranger, because he doesn't want her to pay for his decisions either. From the get-go, that's what drives him to make this choice to help this person, is he sees someone who should not have that suit. No one should be seen in that suit, because the choices that he's made make it very dangerous to own it. So,
yeah, it's a great point. Well, one thing that we learn here, it's kind of huge, is we learn that who his wife is. We find out that his wife was Agent 19, a.k.a. Mockingbird, a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, which I guess means that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show is not canon anymore, because it had its own Mockingbird, totally different person. And I think what it's really interesting, though, is that it helps us it helps us understand why Clint and her have this type of relationship, because she legitimately understands his life and the world that he's in a way that nobody else can. And that's why their marriage works. And so I think, this was so much fun to learn, and I thought was really, really cool. And I kind of want more of them together now rather than like less, because this would be really great to see more of this relationship.
Well, I don't wonder if by introducing her backstory, if they might not incorporate her into another plot line, maybe without him, or with him being more of a back plot, staying at home with the kids for once.
I think you're 100% right that could be the case. And, it'd just be interesting because, with it also means that when it comes to, training Kate, she has as much probably to learn from her as she does from Clint, which is really cool, and what a perfect, family for Kate to be a part of now. She's a part of the family business, and so I think I just really liked that part because, I think everybody was like, what is this watch thing? And why, and then to find out why it would matter so much was really cool. And of course, even just thinking about the danger of like Avengers level equipment floating around on the black market, is kind of terrifying. So that might be interesting to see followed up more as well. But yeah, I love that. So
yeah, and I love that they kind of brought Kate into their fold at the end, since, her family business isn't necessarily one you'd want to be inducted into.
Yeah, no, exactly. One of the things that I thought was really beautiful as well about the series, especially looking at, Clint and Kate and the whole back and forth they have, she has this hero worship of him. And what I really love is that this whole show is about showing her what it means to really be a hero. And it's not about a cool costume. It's not about marketing yourself. It's not about trick arrows, and she says it at the end, which is, you taught me that being a hero is doing right no matter what the cost. And I really like that we watch Kate learn this lesson, and she has to literally live out that lesson on Christmas Eve as she has her mother arrested. And I think there's something really cool about watching a hero kind of make that metamorphosis into a hero without necessarily even realizing it. Kate wants to be a hero. I think she thinks it's all about the trappings of the costumes and stuff and running around saving people.
The brand.
But that's not it, right? And I love that we go deep. And, the beauty of this is that Clint is the perfect person to really, I think, teach Kate about this, because he's never cared about any of that stuff. That's not what it's been about for him. And I'm talking too much. I just love it.
No, you said it perfectly. And I really think that there wouldn't have been a better Avenger for Kate to be following, because he has the humanity aspect that she desperately needed to make it real for her, and not just this fantasy role play type thing.
Right.
Where, she wants to be the superhero that she sees in her head, but she also needs to be faced with these harsh realities, because that's all part of the job. The cool stuff, the trick arrows, the suits, the loss, the pain, and the responsibility, most importantly.
I think that's a really good point. It just came into my head, how important this is, because we'll talk about it just a little bit later, but this isn't LARPing. This isn't a joke. This is serious. We're not role playing. Being a hero isn't role playing. It's truly about being out there in the danger, being willing to put yourself on the line, and you're putting your body where your mouth is, in the sense of I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that the right thing happens for the right reason at the right time, regardless of the cost. And the whole goal is to save other people's lives. And I think that's just really interesting, that I hadn't even really thought of that idea of how the two, why the LARPers come into this. But this isn't a game. It isn't a game.
I think that was intentional, that they had that kind of a group placed in to parallel the reality versus the fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great, it didn't occur to me until now as we're talking about it, which is what makes this so fun. And I think, too, one of the cool things that Clint shows her as well is, and he talks about that, this is about managing loss and finding a way to move on, which in many ways, I think this is exactly what Kate's kind of been struggling with the loss of her father. She truly is trying to find a way to move on and find her place in the world, and what she's going to do with the rest of her life. And I think the beauty of this is that Clint doesn't sugarcoat this for her. Being a hero is painful business. Mind, body, and soul, and the dealing with loss. And so all of those things I think is really neat that we really get this behind. It's like the behind the scenes of being a hero, that we don't often get from many things because, we don't have those moments to really talk about. And this is one of the places where for the first time, I feel like the Marvel shows have finally taken full advantage of it being a television show. So we can kind of be behind the scenes with these characters because we have, and I feel like this is the first one that's really utilized the time we've had on screen in a way that really legitimizes this being like a 6-episode show instead of like, a 2-hour movie. Yeah.
And I like, on a side note, the continuity that they kept within the show, because the 6-episode show is the 6 days leading up to Christmas, and they kept and maintained on their main characters every cut, every bruise, every bandage, and had them consistent throughout the episodes, which I thought was really nice to see. Because in one scene in a movie, they'll be all banged up. 20 minutes later, they're all shiny and new.
Yeah,
so I thought that was a nice.
That
layer.
Is a great point. Yep. I think that's something that should be really praised because, yeah, absolutely. In too many shows, we just forget about, oh, well, they had the bandage up there. Yeah. And so too quickly, people get healed and they don't have superpowers for healing. So we talked a little bit about this that I thought was really interesting, but the fact that this show is about dealing with death, Kate dealing with the loss of her father, Clint dealing with the loss of Natasha, Yelena dealing with the loss of Natasha, Maya dealing with the loss of her father. And I was struck by how this movie finally pays homage to the death of Black Widow in a way that even the Black Widow movie doesn't do a great job of. And no, this movie, like watching Clint deal with the aftermath of losing his best friend, was amazing. And then of course being able to watch Yelena deal with that as well, I thought was wonderful. And I think this show really utilizes that space perfectly and beautifully. Like I wasn't necessarily expecting the show to be about that, but I think this does a great job.
Yeah, you got to spend some time and sit with the grief that they were all experiencing and how they were dealing with it, as opposed to like in the movie, they had to keep going. So it just, it happened. It was sad. We all shed a tear in the theater, but then they were on to the next part of the plot. And then in Black Widow, they kind of cheapened what would have been a solemn, heartfelt moment with Valerie. And they made it a funny moment, or at least an offhanded moment, instead of dealing with that moment and letting it kind of swell to what it should have been. Whereas this one, you get to kind of see everyone processing, everyone sitting in it. And I thought that was a really important aspect to add to this and to see.
Yeah, I mean, I like the way you said that, just kind of sitting in it. And I mean, that moment where he goes to the monument that's there and, the plaque with their names on it. And he talks to it as if she's there, and how he talks about missing her and wishes she was here. And, she was really the best of them in many ways that he believes. And all of that is just so moving. And, it's been an interesting thing because as John and I've been doing Assembling Avengers, she is a character who just never really gets her due for the most part, because, and except for the Captain America movies, the Winter Soldier and Civil War, where she really, Winter Soldier is probably her best appearance, where she just really has a lot to do, and she's really connected with one of the other characters in a way that's truly meaningful. That, who knows why they just never created a Black Widow movie, whereas like her and Hawkeye, I just don't know why you wouldn't have done that. You just an absolute waste of material. But yeah, and this makes that even more poignant because they're like, dang it, what did we lose by not having those two characters together on screen more often and in a movie together where it's just a buddy cop movie basically with those two, would have been so great. So
yeah, I mean, I appreciated the baton toss or the baton pass that Black Widow was, but I feel like they missed an opportunity with her 100% to have her really shine in her own film or in a film with Clint. Because, I mean, I would pay good money to see that.
And I do have a question, because I think this also raised this idea of, like, you know, in death, like, what does the Contessa have to do with all of this, in the sense that we learned that Kingpin was the one who helped Kate's mom hire a Black Widow to assassinate Clint. But we know in the Black Widow movie that she's the one who told Yelena that Clint was Natasha's murderer. So was she the one who got the contract and gave it to Natasha? Like, what is going on here?
Kingpin's lackey, or is Kingpin her lackey? Like, and this is the first time I've seen Kingpin on screen for any of this. I'm like, where did he come from? All right, he's in here. Okay. But I don't know what her hand is. And I think that's part of the point, is that we don't know what the hand she's holding is and what she's planning, because it seems like she's starting to try and collect all the broken people that have abilities and put them into her own little pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, like this weird, you know, almost dark Avengers or something. Yeah. So, well, we've talked somewhat about her, but, you know, introducing Maya into this series, you know, who is going to be a new character that we will have more of as Echo. But what did you think about her introduction here and how she plays into the plot? Because, you know, it does seem like they really are setting up a character here who's going to mean a lot more to the MCU moving forward.
I really liked how viscerally she was played. She was in real time dealing with this grief and loss, and she was chaos the entire time. She was impulsive. She was reckless. She was forgetting about everyone else that she had who was loyal to her, and just, we saw her spiraling. And nobody was there to catch her. And the only person that she was relying on was the one who kind of stabbed her in the back in the first place. So I thought that it was a really great character development to watch her go from just kind of being, you know, a crime boss to having this vendetta when she realizes that she might be able to get revenge, to the realization down throughout the series that who she blamed was not the hand that, you know, forced the knife. And then the fallout from that decision that she learned of. So I thought that was a very interesting trajectory for her. And I'm excited to see where she lands, because I don't really think she has an allegiance right now.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think, one, I think she was a really cool character, really well played. Not an easy character to play, one that's deaf, and obviously one with a disability. In the fact that, you know, she only has one leg. I thought the backstory for her was really well done. And obviously, too, I think the beauty of it is that how well she plays into this thematically, because, you know, Maya, Yelena, and Clint are all dealing with the way in which rage can easily blind you and makes you easily manipulable. And that's exactly what happened to all of them in some ways. Especially here with Maya and Yelena, both being mirrors for one another, in that they are so rage-filled about the loss of their family members that they are willing to be led down a path to which gives them an easy answer of, like, revenge that they think is going to make them feel better. And that's just never helpful. And I love a larger aspect of this is just, this show does a great job of reminding us of how rage and anger make us stupid. And and I say that, and it might sound harsh, but I think it's a perfect reminder because, like, we need to look at ourselves. Like, all of the rage that we just see out there every single day, just pouring out of everyone, it's not making us smarter. It's making us dumber. Or better, yeah.
And our decisions are not positively impacted by giving into that kind of emotion.
I think you're 100% right. And so I liked the way in which we see, you know, Kingpin being able to use her after her father's death, manipulate her. And again, like, to me, I couldn't think of a better show to come out at the end of 2021 than one that reminds us that your rage that you're feeling might be the very thing that somebody's manipulating you to make you feel or act or think in a certain way because you're not thinking clearly. Just maybe.
Yeah, and when you're only thinking within the parameters of your own grief and your own hurt, you're also not going to see the whole picture either. So
it's a really good point. Well, and it also, I think, goes to show is don't make decisions at times when you're emotionally compromised. You know, kind of reminds me of Star Trek 09, where Kirk is being reminded by Prime Spock that the Spock from this universe just saw his planet destroyed. He's emotionally compromised. Trauma and grief and terrible things happening, unintended situations, all of these things create emotional reactions in us, which can leave us compromised. And so recognizing that compromise that's happened in us and then working to deal with it is something that's really important. And again, I think this is one of those things that we see in this whole show. It's like you have to deal with the ramifications of either the choices that you've made or the things that have happened to you and what your choices are going to be after those, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could do that well, like Kate. We've seen Kate did very well with her choices. Her mom didn't make good choices when bad things happened. Clint didn't make good choices when bad things happened. Maya hasn't made good choices when bad things happened. Like, we see Yelena hasn't necessarily made great choices when bad things have happened. So we see all of these characters dealing with all of these things. And again, I just this is what I think makes this such a great show, is that all of these things are playing so well together thematically, because all of the stories are continuing to feed the same themes.
100%. And I think that they are starting to set up maybe even a new way of telling the Marvel story as a whole going forward. Just with what I've seen from the TV shows, because I feel like they deal with a lot more realistically.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. Well, I just wanted to ask you real quickly about the unintended help that we get from the LARPers. And as kind of like silly as it was, I have to say, especially on the rewatch, I just kind of loved it. I thought all of the characters were really fun. And I thought what it did is that it showed the willingness, the givingness, the openness that people can have. And it was a juxtaposition off of all of these other characters who we see are just kind of in it for selfish reasons or trying to use people. These are people who are willing to open up their homes, they open up their lives, open up their hearts to people in need. And it was just, it was a nice juxtaposition to all the other things that we were seeing in the show. And like, there are good people out there.
Yep. I mean, the cop even lent out her special duffel bag from her wife.
Yep.
That was so sweet. I mean, she was a little sad, but
yeah.
No, I thought
hopefully she got the bag back.
I really hope she got that bag back. I was honestly still thinking about that after the show ended.
You know, she got to help save the city, so I'm thinking she might be okay with it if she didn't, because she also got to meet Hawkeye.
That was pretty cool.
So, and maybe she got to, have her wife meet Hawkeye too. So
that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think that they were so necessary to have in this story because everything they did was selfless. And at the end of the day, they also got to be a bit of the hero in each of their own ways without having any superpowers or being a crime lord, just with what they had been given and who they already were. And I thought that was a really special moment for all of them to see them get their moments.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Well, I wanted to ask you about this because obviously we just talked about Spider-Man No Way Home, and we introduced Matt Murdock from the Daredevil series, and we bring in Kingpin. And so, one, I wanted to ask you what you thought of his presentation here, and two, how you kind of felt about them finally bringing this other major character from the Daredevil series into the MCU.
I didn't feel particularly strongly about Kingpin's presence. If I'm being honest, he didn't make me nervous or sweat, or whenever he was trying to be menacing, I didn't really feel too much. I don't know if maybe he wasn't mean mugging it enough or something for me, but he was almost like the nonchalant big bad. So that was not what I expected. Because I haven't seen a lot of Kingpin previous to this in other series. So that was kind of my first taste.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, he's sitting here and he's got all of this cheap Hawaiian decor behind him, and he's just kind of hanging out. So it was a different kind of villain for me. And I will we get more? Is he dead?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, having watched all 3 seasons of Daredevil on Netflix, I was very excited when they finally revealed that the big guy was him. I thought this was fantastic, and it's a great thing to see him. And I think what I'm so interesting is, I think what I'm so interested in is to see, was his rise to power again because of the blip? And is he slightly different here in his portrayal because of all of that happened and what happened in those years? Obviously he's gotten out of prison and he's, risen to power in New York again. Everybody kind of knows he's the crime lord, underlord now. And he's obviously gained some immense strength too. So, I would absolutely love to see him again, and I'm very excited that they brought him back. And, I know they portrayed that he got shot at the end, but I also know from the comics, from kind of reading some stuff, that, he's been shot in the head before and survived. So, I have no doubt that he'll be back. And so I'm really excited to see that, because obviously he would be a great villain for, I kind of want to see a Spider-Man movie where he teams up with Daredevil to take down Kingpin. It'd be kind of cool. So yeah, I'm pumped that they brought him in, and I'm pumped that they're bringing him and Matt Murdock into the MCU. I hope we get to see more of them. So
yeah, I'd be interested to see going forward, if we get Kingpin again, how his presence would be in the next film. Is he going to be super PO'd that he got shot by his lackey, or?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I think I just want him to be more rageful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking, like, is this being, are we setting him up because we're going to see him in the, the Echo show that they're going to do? So.
Yeah, I'd like to see him less comfortable. A little edgier.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Well, I wanted to ask you just what you thought about the action and the music in the show. Obviously, we get some really interesting music in the show, along with the score, as well as, of course, a lot of great action sequences. And so just wanted to see what you thought of both of those things, for this series.
Musical numbers aside, I thought the music in the show was great. And I mean, how much better does it get when you get a Christmas series with explosions the whole way through? I was thrilled. I'm like, this is legitimately like a Christmas special. And they're blowing things up every 10 minutes. I am a happy camper.
Yeah. It's like Die Hard on steroids.
Exactly. It was perfect.
Yeah, the one thing, I mean, the Rogers musical was absolutely perfect because it fits everything I know about what Broadway would do to something. And the fact that they put on an entire like Broadway-like production for this was hysterical. And that song is kind of like insidiously catchy, and you just find yourself singing "I Could Do This All Day," because apparently you can sing this all day. Yeah, but I mean, the one thing I thought about this show is that I think the action sequences here might be the best of any of the Marvel series so far on Disney Plus. I thought they all looked fantastic. The fight scenes we got, the choreography we got. The car chase sequence with all the arrows was amazing. I thought really well done for what we're doing on a television show. And the fight we got at the very end with all of the different characters fighting one another, I thought was really well done. I was very impressed with just the overall production of the show, and as well as just the look and the feel of the rooftop fight we got, with Clint and Yelena and Kate, as well as, Maya getting into the mix. All of that stuff was really well done. And I really have to give credit to Christoph Beck and then Michael Paraskevas. But they did the music for just the score for all of the episodes. The way they introduced a Hawkeye theme and then they interwove all of this Christmas music into the score was phenomenal. It makes for really fun listening, and I'm like, wow, that was great. So I guess with all that said, I'm really excited to hear what you're going to end up rating Hawkeye Season 1.
So what's our scale this time?
We'll just make it easy. We'll go out of 5, and so...
I would have to give it like a 4.7.
Nice.
It was just enjoyable watching the whole way through. The acting was great. The action sequences were phenomenal. I loved the music. As obnoxious as the musical number was, it fit. It did what it was supposed to, and it made you cringe in the right way the whole time. And I thought that all of the storylines, all of the characters, their plots were really well developed. And I thought it was a really elegantly done way to introduce Kate Bishop into the MCU as our next Hawkeye.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think right now I'm going to go with a 4 out of 5. Not to say that, and there's a possibility that this could possibly go up when I watch it again for Assembling Avengers. But like, This is, to me, hands down, no questions asked, absolutely the best thing that they've done for Disney Plus yet. And part of that is what we talked about. Like, it's so consistent in the tone and the thematic elements, the character development. Like, it feels the most cohesive of a show as they've done so far. And in many ways, like, this is one of the most highly rated things I have for Marvel. It was really, really good. And I've watched it twice now. And so I really like this show. Like, I had a good time rewatching it. And, sometimes, like, when you rewatch something and, like, what's going to happen, so you just kind of find yourself playing your phone a little bit more. Like, I didn't do that very much with this show.
No, us either. We binged the whole thing in one day.
Yeah, it's great.
So it was a really great way to watch it. And I remember when we first started watching it, my husband saw Hawkeye with his hearing aid and he's like, look, even superheroes have hearing aids. And he was so excited to see that representation. And I thought they did a beautiful job throughout the show as well with that, with both Maya and Hawkeye.
That's really cool to see that be the case. And so, well, I love that we got a chance to talk about this, and I'm always thankful, when we get a chance to talk about something that we end up loving and just really enjoying watching, and that's what makes it so much fun. So, but before we go though, it's time for some recommendations, and so what do you want to recommend to everybody this week, Amanda?
Let's go down the rabbit hole and recommend The Secret of NIMH.
Ooh, nice.
Something a little out there, but it was one of my favorite growing up of the off-brand, non-Disney cartoon kids movies, and I think that one still has really beautiful writing as an adult to watch. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I haven't seen that movie in a really long time, but that's great. And like you said, yeah, there were so many great kind of off-brand animation things that weren't Disney, but that we, you grew up with. And yeah, I might have to go back and revisit that. So I'm going to recommend to everybody to go and check out Daredevil season 1 through 3 on Netflix, because if you haven't seen those and you kind of want to understand more of who this character is of Matt Murdock and or Kingpin, fantastic way to do it. I have seen all 3 seasons now. I like seasons 1 and 3 the best. Season 2 is okay, but it's not as good as the other 2. And I want more of that character, especially in light of what we've seen now with this and No Way Home. So that's going to be my recommendation. But if anybody does want to catch up with you and just kind of see what else you've got going on, where can they find you, Amanda?
Let's see. You can find me at Twin Sons Amanda on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And then also at Sabers and Spells on the Skywalking Network.
Fantastic. And just so everybody knows too, Amanda's actually just going to join us more often here in the 602 Club, so be looking forward to that. I'm super excited to be able to have you on board more often, and Christy and I have had so much fun with you on the show, and we're like, we should just have Amanda back more often. So, and then you said yes, so sucker.
Hey.
So that's going to be fun, and I hope everybody will look forward to that here in 2022. But of course, you can find me all over the place under the name Matt Rushing02, Instagram, Letterboxd, Vero, Twitter, all those type of places. You can find me. You can also find me here with, of course, in the 602 Club feed with Assembling Avengers, as well as Snyder Cuts, those bonus shows in the main feed you can find that I do with John Mills. You can also find me on The Orb, Literary Treks, and Warp 5. The Orb is about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Literary Treks is about the books and the comics of Star Trek, and Warp 5 is about Star Trek Enterprise. And then over on the Nerd Party Network doing Outpost with Drea Kaufman. We finished that show. It's all about Harry Potter, one chapter at a time. We went through the entire series, so you can check that out now, as well as Aggressive Negotiations, talking Star Wars each and every week with John Mills. But thank you so much for joining us.
And y'all come back now, you hear?